We'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to the public hearing for the Independent Redistricting Commission. We're delighted to be here in Moab and are grateful for your hospitality. We have online Commissioner Baker and Commissioner Durham, and we may have one more commissioner join us. We're not sure yet, but we're hoping so. I'm Rex Facer. I'm the chair of the commission, and I have with me Lyle Hilliard, who's also on the commission. What we'll do to start is I'll give a brief presentation about our role in redistricting and how the process will flow from here on out. And then we'll open it up. We'll have a couple of staff presentations, and then we'll open it up for comment. And we'll just be relatively informal, invite folks up, but we won't worry about taking a number or anything of that nature. So let me start by telling you a little bit about our role in the redistricting process. The commission was created through the Proposition 4 in 2018, where the voters approved the creation of the Independent Redistricting Commission. In 2020, through Senate Bill 200, there was a compromise between the legislature with Better Boundaries, among others, that made some modifications to the initiative and ultimately resulted in the form of the commission that we have today. The commission is a 7-member commission. 3 of our members were appointed by the Republican leadership in the legislature. 2 of those could be partisan appointments, and 1 of them had to be an independent appointment. So Commissioner Baker, who's listening online, is the Republican independent appointment. Commissioner Hilliard is one of the Republican appointees, as was Rob Bishop. The Democratic appointees are Commissioner Durham, who's with us tonight online, Commissioner Hale, who unfortunately won't be able to join us, and then the independent appointee on the Democratic side was Commissioner Bill Thorne. And we're hoping that he might be able to join us, but we're not sure if that's still working out. Our charge, I was appointed by Governor Cox. So our charge is to produce a set of district maps for Congress, the State House, the State Senate, and the State School Board. We will present those maps to the legislature, and the legislature, under the compromise, will have the ultimate decision of which maps to adopt. Now, our hope is that through the data gathering process that we've gone through, as well as the engagement that we've had as a commission in drawing maps, we hope that our maps will be used by the legislature and will foster a productive conversation that will hopefully fairly represent the communities that we're hearing from. So the commission, we were all appointed in February. And then we started our initial meetings and trying to learn about redistricting. None of us were redistricting experts when this process started. And so we went through a learning process. We had several experts, both from within the state of Utah, but also nationally, come and make presentations to us. And then in August, we had probably the most important event for the commission. That was receiving the census data. We couldn't start drawing maps until we had the formal data from the Census Bureau, and that was delayed due to the pandemic, among other issues. And so on August 12th, the Census Bureau released their redistricting data that gave us at the block level census numbers for the entire state. And so the way the census works is the block level is the smallest unit of the census, and those blocks can contain 0 people. And they can contain literally hundreds or thousands of people, depending on the block and where you're at in the state. And we can't, as a matter of law, divide blocks when we're drawing the line. So we have to take a whole block on one side or another of any given line. So in drawing the maps, what we've done is we've created 3 mapping teams. And each team has somebody who is appointed by a Republican and a Democrat. So, for example, Commissioner Hilliard has been drawing with Commissioner Thorne. Commissioner Hilliard appointed by the Republicans, Commissioner Thorne appointed by the Democrats. We've done that on each of our teams. And the idea was we wanted to have a very cooperative working arrangement. And we wanted to focus on the things that we think matter the most, and that is representing fairly the people and the feedback that we're receiving. And so since September, we've been holding a series of public hearings. When we're done, we will have held about 15 across the state. This is actually our third hearing in southeastern Utah. So we had one in Monticello, we had one down in Mexican Water, and now this one in Moab. And so we appreciate, again, your hospitality. And I know that redistricting is an issue of significant relevance to Moab because of the way the districts have historically been split. So what I want to do is share with you the criteria that we're using in drawing our maps as a commission. And I will note that we have statutory criteria that we're required to use. And now we have to balance those criteria against one another, but we still have to entertain all of these criteria, which is different from the legislature. They have the ability to pay attention to whatever they prefer. And now our hope is that by going through this work and paying attention to these criteria, that they'll understand why we are, and we'll have the public's comments supporting our use of these criteria. Now, the first criteria, and in many ways, the one that receives the most scrutiny is equal population. Each district has to have substantially equal population. And at the congressional level, that means that each district across the state has to have 817,904 people. Now, we can have some deviation. The legislature adopted a standard of 0.2% deviation, which is about 817 above or 817 below. So we could have a district that has up to 817 more people than another district, or 817 people fewer. But much of the conversation has been around trying to have that deviation as small as possible. And so you'll see from the maps that we have a range of variations on that deviation. But at the end of the day, we're looking at substantially equal populations for each of these kinds of districts. For the state Senate, the target population is 112,814. For the state House, it's 43,622. And for the state school board, it's 218,108. Now, that's important for a whole host of reasons, one of which is that in a community like Moab, where we have just over 5,300, we have 5,366 people according to the census data. And so that's not enough to make up a district on its own. And so it's going to have to be combined somehow with some other population group. Now, we can go north, we can go south, or we can go west. We can't go east. As much as you might want to be grouped with Colorado, sorry, you're out of luck. You're stuck with us here in Utah. But for the House, that means that Grand County has just over 9,600 people. So again, we've still got to pick up an extra roughly 33,000, 32,000 people in order to make a House district, and even more to make up a Senate district, and far more to make up a state school board seat or a congressional seat. So that criteria is, please.
Can I just ask, because it's been a burning question, is for the Senate, why don't we treat our Senate the same way that we do federally, where each county would get its own representative?
That goes back to a decision that the Supreme Court made back in the 60s. I don't know if you want to say any more about that, Lyle.
Well, historically, the state of Utah has done that. And in fact, the Utah Constitution says there'll be 29 senators, and that was based on one per county. In 1960s, the United States Supreme Court held one man, one vote. And they said, although the compromise on a national level was senators and based 2 per state, that doesn't apply to the states. And the states have to do the population. So since 1962, we've had to have equal population for the Senate and House. So, and again, I come from Logan. I'd like to have one from Cache and one from Rich that I represented. But if we were, it'd be struck down immediately by the court. So we've got to based on population. United States Supreme Court would. Yeah, and I think our Utah Supreme Court has to follow federal law on this issue. So it would be struck down.
Thank you.
You bet. So that's the first criteria, that equal population. And the next criteria that we have is that areas have to be contiguous. So let's, we know we've got a number of resort communities across the state, whether it's Moab, Park City, Bryan Head, et cetera. We can't lump all of you together and say, let's just put all of the resort communities in one district unless they were connected somehow geographically. So we can't have islands in the middle of other districts that make up a district. So we can't have a district that's made up of Moab, Park City, and Bryan Head, for example. Now, the other thing that we've been charged to do is try and have compact districts, at least as compact as possible. Now, probably better than I that the rural part of the state in many areas is quite sparsely populated. And so we can't necessarily have a really small geographic area in a place like Grand County because people are spread out. Now, we can do that quite easily in a place like Salt Lake or Utah County where there's a lot more population density. And so what we're trying to do, even when we can't be compact, we're trying to avoid odd shapes that can't be explained by other legitimate criteria. So, for example, we have a criteria of trying to keep cities and counties whole. That's one of our criteria. And so when you look at some of our maps, you'll notice that occasionally we have lines that look really, really odd. Part of the reason for that is that we followed, in many cases, city boundaries. And as you are probably familiar, city boundaries do not always follow nice straight lines or circular lines. They're jagged as there's an annexation that picks up an area here or picks up an area there, et cetera. And so the jagged lines that you'll see on our maps aren't because we were trying to grab some group, whether it's a minority group or some political group. It's because we were following community boundaries in drawing our lines. The fourth criteria that we have is communities of interest. In communities of interest, it's a relatively new criteria in the redistricting world. There were some that tried to do it a little bit back in 2010, but this is the first time that we've used it here in the state. And communities of interest are those contiguous geographies where people view a common interest. It could be a social interest. It could be an environmental interest. It could be an economic interest. And so one could argue, for example, that there is a community of interest in the greater Moab area that extends beyond the city's boundaries that's interested in the economic activity of the greater Moab. And so you could argue that it could be a community of interest. Now, what we've been doing is we've been asking people across the state to tell us about their communities of interest. And we've gotten over 1,000 submissions. And so we've actually been mapping those so that we can see those patterns. And you can actually go on our website and see them as well. And we'll talk about that when our staff makes a presentation. But we're trying to pay attention to those. Now, the challenge with the communities of interest is the way I might describe my community of interest might not match the way my neighbor describes my community or their community of interest, right? And so we're having to make judgment calls about those communities of interest. And that's one of the things that does make it a bit more challenging to try and pay attention to that. Now, what our software has done is it has allowed us a strategy to try and look for concentrations, places of overlaps of communities of interest, and allow us to pay attention to those, the areas where lots of people are coming together and saying, yes, this is our community of interest. The next criteria that we have is geographic boundaries. So we've been asked to use, where possible, things like rivers, mountain ranges, highways, boundaries that are clear and easily distinguishable when we draw our district lines. And so occasionally it might make sense to use I-70 as a boundary. In Salt Lake County, there are a number of places where we've used I-15 because it's a natural boundary. We had a meeting in Provo last week where one of the people called it, I think, a mountain, because people, you're either on one side or the other of the interstate, and there's no, crossing between, hardly. Another criteria that we've been given is the cores of prior districts. Now, this is this criteria, it gives us one of the easy ways that we can highlight how some of these criteria can come into conflict with one another. So when we're looking at geographic boundaries, we may draw a geographic boundary that doesn't necessarily match the core of the previous district. And the other thing that with the cores of previous districts is the patterns of growth over the last 10 years have not happened evenly across all of the districts. And so in order to fix, for example, the first congressional district that I think is about, if I remember, it's about 16,000, is it under or over? Joey's going to tell me really quick. Yeah, so we've got an extra 16,000 people in the current first district. So what we've got to do first is take the 16,000 people out of there and put them into the second, third, or fourth district. Well, two of those other districts are also over by about 10 to 15,000 people, and one of them's under by about 30,000 people. Well, it just doesn't all move quite smoothly to just pick them up from one place and move them to another. And so even if we're trying to keep cores of prior districts together, there are some challenges, and that's most pronounced, especially at the House level, where we're seeing dramatic growth in places like southeastern Utah or southwestern Utah County, northeastern or northwestern Utah County, and southern Utah County as well. And so we're seeing patterns of representation have to change because the patterns of growth have changed across those communities. As I mentioned, we've been asked to try and keep cities and counties whole, to not split them if it's avoidable. Now, there are some places where we have to split cities. Salt Lake City, for example, is about 199,000 people. So that's more than the 43,000 for a House district. And so we have to split Salt Lake City at least about 5 times, or 4 and change anyway. And counties, so we've heard people say, keep Salt Lake County as one congressional district. Well, it has far more than the 800,000 people necessary for a district. And so it, by rule, has to be separated into at least 2 congressional districts. And it all depends on where you start. It's kind of like putting a puzzle together. Where you start makes a difference on how things come together in the end. And one of the challenges that you have is when you're putting those last few pieces together, any deviation that you've had ends up all funneling together at the end. And you may find, as we did in one of the House districts that Commissioner Hale and I drew, we ended up having like 2,500 people, too many, which was a larger deviation than we were comfortable with. And so we essentially fixed it as best we could, and then we went back to the drawing board and started over. And we found, and I think Commissioner Hilliard found a similar thing, that if you start with the borders, it makes it a little bit easier, in part because we've got a lot more ability to play with things along the Wasatch Front than we do out in rural Utah. Then the last 2 criteria we have are boundary agreement. So where we can, we'd like to have boundary lines the same across districts. Now, one of the problems that you'll note quite quickly is that our districts don't easily divide into each other. So we've got 75 House seats, 29 Senate seats, 15 school board seats, 4 congressional seats. And those don't all make it so that we could easily nest our districts. If they did, it would be really quite convenient. But for example, our school boards, we have some counties that have one school board district, some counties have multiple school board districts. And so even when we try and nest them with our house maps, it ends up getting messy really quick if we're trying to preserve boundaries of things like school districts. So the last criteria, and one that I think is in some ways defining of the commission, is that we are not considering political data when we're drawing our maps. So the statute tells us that we can't favor or disfavor elected officials, candidates or prospective candidates, or political parties. And so that we're not doing that, we've been completely not paying attention to that political data. So we don't know if an area is largely made up of Democratic voters or an area is largely made up of Republican voters. And so when we look at communities of interest, people might tell us that we're a common community, but that community can't be defined for our purposes anyway as members of a political party. They can be people that share an environmental issue. Maybe they all share the same watershed. Maybe they all share the same concern about preservation of lands or something else. And so those could be communities of interest, but not political parties. And so that's one of the reasons that as we put our map drawing teams together, we've had bipartisan teams, and we've also not been paying attention to political data. Anything that I've missed, Commissioner Hilliard?
There's always a lot of things you can say in addition. I just add this, numbers and population are objective. And people say, well, the population's changed. True, that's not correct. We can't even mess with that. We have to say, those are the figures given us, I think in April of 2020, and that becomes our basis. And if maybe 500 people have moved into Moab since it was done, or 500 people moved out, that's immaterial to what we do. If we started doing that, we'd go crazy, trying to keep up on everything. So the numbers are objective, and we know when we get through, we have so many based on the population. Somebody told me there's 77,000 census blocks. And so it's like a big, gigantic puzzle you're trying to put together, but you have to come out. For example, if we ended up with 3 congressional districts, rather than having 817,094, say we had 500 less in each one of them as the first 3, that would mean the 4th one would have to pick up 1,500 because they balance it. How we did is took the total population by the census, divided it by 4 for Congress, divided by 29%, 15 for the House, for the school board, and 75 for the House. And that's the numbers that we have. And so that becomes very difficult. It's frustrating to me personally when I do a district and I have a city that's 100 over. So I have to take 100 out of the city limits and put it in some other place. Utah County is a good example because those cities are all big and growing and they're all next to each other. So when you need to pick up 100, you have to go across it, and it really causes problems. I wish I could do it differently. But you do know this, that and the law says we can deviate from this if we have a good reason to explain it. But the problem is if you do it, then you've got to defend yourself in court. And so the concerns are, we may get the districts done, and a horrible thing we have is that we didn't get the data until the middle of August. We normally get it at the end of April. So we have a very short window to get this thing done. We have to give it to the legislature on November the 1st because the Constitution says that the district is done by the legislature. We can only make a recommendation, and as Commissioner Pacer said, we hope that recommendation is so well thought out and done that they'll be forced to take it because of that. Then they have to adopt the redistricting, and they have to pass a law that's adopted, and they have to have it done by January 1st because that's when people start gathering signatures to run for the legislature, and they have to know where their districts are. So this time frame puts it very, very difficult to us. Now, I want to just share and let you think about this a little bit. San Juan County and Grand County are divided from the rest of the state by the Colorado River. It's pretty hard to walk from San Juan County to, say, Kane County. I share this story. I have a good friend, my neighbor in Logan, who grew up in Tokerville. He said as a kid in Tokerville, it was easier to go to California and play a football game than go all the way, and that's before I-70, go all the way up into Utah County and then come down to Moab to play in Moab football. So you and Moab know the situation I'm talking about because you have to do the same kind of travel thing. So that makes it very difficult. So if we put San Juan County and Grand County together, we have about 24,000. So we have to find about another 19,000 someplace else. We can't go south because of Arizona. If we go west, we're dealing with the Colorado River, and there's not a lot of big cities west of here that you could pick up that kind of a population. We can go north, and if we do, we can cross over the range and go into Uinta County. But Uinta County is almost the size of a house district. So we start taking very many of those people out to put them in your district to make it one house district here. Then you have the problem of them saying, wait a minute. We're bigger than Grand County. We're bigger than San Juan County. Now you're going to take away that we can't elect our own representative. That's the political. Now we can go up Utah 6 and go up into the Price area and up in there, Green River, we can bring that in. But again, we're not anywhere close to the 43. So we have to do some putting together and putting those, and it's really a challenge. And I'd really like to hear from you people where you think we ought to go to find those people, because I have no idea where the lines should be drawn, other than I agree we ought to make it countywide as much as possible. So Grand County should all be together. But we've heard a proposal from the Basin area. They want to take Daggett and Uinta County and come down in this area and pick up enough to get their votes. If they do that, it splits Grand County in a way that makes it impossible for you. I don't know. I don't think Price is about 22,000. So if you went here and tried to go all the way to Price, you wouldn't make it. And if you did make it, you're dividing Price some way. And I would imagine the people in Price will say, now, wait a minute, we're 22,000. We don't get a legislature because you split us all up. I hear some people come to our meetings think that we're going to just stack our fingers and have a figure that everybody's going to love. But it's really a challenge because objectively, numbers are very important. And if you do anything other than numbers, you've got to have a really good reason to explain to a court why you deviated. Because if there's litigation, we don't know for several years what the final outcome is. So, and the legislature, I think, is striving very hard to be equally balanced on all of them. And so if we can't do that or come at least close to it, it'd be a very easy reason for them to say that not a good enough district because it opens up to litigation. But I'm here to hear you and appreciate the work we've done and the people here tonight to help us solve this problem, because you know your area far better than we do.
And that reminds me of a couple of issues. One, all of the mapping that our mapping teams are doing is being broadcast live on YouTube. And so if you want to watch any of the mapping teams while they're mapping, or go back and see, if you look at one of the maps that we have posted online, again, all of our maps are also posted online so you can see them. So if you look at one of those maps and you go, gosh, I really don't like that, you can search through our YouTube videos and say, oh, when was the purple team drawing congressional maps? And you can go back and see the discussion that we were having and why we made those decisions. And then you can also give us feedback. And so speaking about feedback, I'd like to ask our staff member, Julianne, who's trying to hide in the back. Julianne, if you'll come and walk us through the website and help people see how they can engage with us.
And we're getting a lot and reading a lot.
All right. So getting involved really is not as hefty or complicated as we think it is. I think being here at a public hearing is one of the easiest ways for the public to get involved in the redistricting process. You can just come, you can tell us what you think, you can share your concerns, but we know not everybody is able to make it to public hearing. So we have this awesome website. Our website is uirc.utah.gov. And this is what it looks like. So there's multiple avenues for you to get involved through this website. It's kind of like a portal to give initiative voice. So at the top, you'll see that you can submit a comment or you can draft your own maps. So Joey's gonna head over to up here to participate, and if you click on that, here you have the opportunity to really get nitty and gritty with the mapping tool. The legislative committee also has something similar on their website. We both use the Esri software to map and to do our drafting. So you can either choose to map the entire state of Utah, where you can go and you can try to draw your own districts, what you want Moab's districts to look like, or Grant County or San Juan County. You can map any of that. And really, this mapping tool may look intimidating. It is super easy. We have a tutorial before you click into these mapping tools to show you how to use it. We also have like a helpline. This is the tutorial right here before you click on these two buttons. So once you go and you draw your districts, you can submit a comment, tell us what you did, why you did the maps that you did, and then it gets sent to us. And then the other button you can click on is to map your community. And we talked a little bit about community of interest tonight. Community of interest has no real definition. It can be just something that binds your community together. Why do you feel like you should be kept together? Either if it's a cultural background, if it's an economic similarity, if it's anything that just kind of pulls you together and defines your community from others. So we want to know that as well, because like Sherman Fisher said, we're mandated to seek these community of interest and to keep them into account when we're drawing our boundaries. So Joey is going, the map is a little slow with Wi-Fi here, but this is just kind of a little bit about what that looks like. You can use a polygon tool to just click around what you want your communities to look like. It seems intimidating, really is not. It takes 5 minutes tops. And then on the right hand side, it's just going to ask you some questions, why you mapped the way you did, and then all of those get sent to our staff. And what we do is we go through, we organize those comments, and we organize our maps. We send them to our teams, our 3 teams of commissioners, and they truly take those into account. That's another reason why we have these public hearings, is so that they can get your input, they can see what you like or don't like about their maps, and they truly go through and they tweak their maps based off the comments that you gave us here or on these maps. So that's another thing that you can do. If you don't want to map these at all, you can scroll down and you can choose to leave a public comment. We have an email address, uirccomments@utah.gov. This is kind of the same thing, they all go to the same place. But you can just say, hey, I don't want to be put with Monticello, or I don't want to be stuck in a district with St. George, or whatever your preference is, you can just say that without having to draw anything. So those are 3 ways that you can get involved through the portal. We also have our social media. You can follow us, you can tweet at us, you can send us messages on Instagram, Facebook, all of the above. We make sure that those comments get sent to our commissioners. And then all of these comments that you sent to us, they are part of public records, so they will get posted on our website in our public record catalog. So those are just some ways for the public to get involved if you're not supposed to make a public hearing. And truly, every comment counts. We really want to hear your input in your district and what you like about your districts. No blanket, it truly helps us to make better maps. So even if you share this information with the legislative committees, we want to hear it too. It helps to make better maps all around, and it helps us to be on the same team going forward. So, cool. Those are some ways we can get involved.
You want to go over that draft?
We're going to go over the draft. So every time our commissioners submit a map, we go and we upload it to our website. So here on our homepage, you see drafted Utah district map. We have our 4 categories: congressional, state senate, state house, and state school board. And we upload those. So we want to be transparent as possible and include the people in this process. So you can go and you can view all these maps that our commissioners have drafted. And if you look at it, you say, that's a kind of a funky map. I'm not really sure I like how that district looks. You can send us a comment about that. So all of these maps are up on our website. We update them. Once we see your comments, we take into consideration, we can go and we can see how we can apply that input to the map making and into our geography. And on the left-hand side, it will just give you a box where you can go and you can submit your comments, and of course that gets sent to us. But yeah, at the top along the blue bar, you have all the maps, green, purple, orange, and just the names of our teams. It doesn't mean anything special, they're just that. So yeah, you can take a look, and we want to know your info. We want to know what you think, because again, make sure you help us to make better maps and help us make maps that represent people.
And-
Did I miss anything else?
I was gonna say, and we want you to know, we pay attention to these comments. So last weekend, we were in Tooele, and we had one of the people came and talked to us about the city of Stockton. It's a small community of like 600 people, I believe. And so when we came back on Tuesday and we're doing mapping, Commissioner Hale and I looked at that, and we actually changed our map in response to that comment. We had another comment that came in with these public comments that said, you're splitting up small cities south of Nephi. And so we went in and we tried to see if we could do something. And in the end, we decided we liked the way we did it the first time, even though we were splitting them up. But we went back and we tried to respond. And we found that we actually made communities a little worse off if we tried to cut them another way. But there is no perfect map. And that's one of the things that you'll notice, that there are some similarities across the maps, but there are also lots of differences across the maps. And so look at them and tell us which ones make the most sense in your community. Help us understand that so that we can choose the best maps. Because we will ultimately be presenting a package of 12 maps to the legislature, 3 maps of each type, House, Senate, school board, and congressional.
I would add, before I go back to that, our commissioners know Utah well, but they don't know Utah that well. They're not from every nook and cranny, not within every nook and cranny of Utah. And that's why your input is so important, because they help fill in those gaps, and they help to complete those sentences or those slots that our commissioners have. So again, I just want to emphasize that your input is so important. They help us to truly make maps that represent you.
Thank you. Gordon?
Yes. So again, what we'll do is go ahead and open up the public comment, and afterwards we'll have the open house. You can come up and show you the software, and review the maps, and give us comments even today.
So we welcome you to come up and, one, tell us who you are, but 2, tell us your perspective on how we ought to be drawing the maps. So, please. Yeah, I guess you could do either, but standing is terrific.
My name is Sam Newman. I've lived in Moab for about 5 years. I came here to learn how to construct our houses, actually. But I'd say the thing that really attracted me to end up in Moab is the recreation. Thinking about the guidelines that you just laid out for us, like the criteria that you're using to select districts, and you're talking about the Colorado River being this really major geographical boundary, which it is. It's very much this whole hole in the rock story about having a hard time getting across the river. But it seems to me that we actually have a lot more in common with communities on the western side of the Colorado River than we do with, say, communities north of I-70. Moab is a formerly rural place that seems to be like rapidly urbanizing, and in terms of the way that we interact with the state legislature, there's been a lot of conflict around our community's ability to self-determine, and we have, I don't know if this gets into like political concerns that you're not allowed to deal with. But I think we actually, I guess in that vein, I think we have a lot more in common with, say, Escalante than we do with Price. And while it might be very hard to get to, you know, you gotta drive a pretty circuitous route to get there from here. I think, you know, as tourism becomes the major industry in a lot of the towns in the southern half of the state, towns with really rural infrastructure that all kind of have to figure out how to modernize relatively quickly. I think, you know, I think we have, Grand County has obviously a lot in common with San Juan County, as we share a watershed in the north half, but also with Kane County, Wayne and Garfield County. And people, I guess, in terms of the recreation community, when people say they're going to Moab, you know, they're coming here, they're going to San Juan County, they're going to the canyons of the Escalante, they're, you know, people are, in terms of like public land impacts, visitors from out of state at least treat kind of the southeastern half of the state kind of indiscriminately. So I would encourage you to think less about the Colorado River as a major boundary and kind of like push our district, you know, across it, even though it might make it a big pain in the butt for a legislator to.
Not if he has a plane.
Sorry.
Not if he has a plane.
There you go. Yeah, we have a great airport.
Right, thank you very much, we appreciate it.
I have a question for you. Can you put up a map of Utah? Come, I want to just have your kind of input as we look at
Okay.
the figures. Can you put up a state map? I wish I could remember the populations in all the counties.
You may say, are you more interested in the state or the federal? The congressional map federal or?
I mean, it seems like the federal, you know, Congress districts are big enough that it's hard to. I guess I'm more concerned about like state senate and state representative. For this. Like, yeah, I mean, the number in, you know, John Curtis's district kind of has to be enormous.
So like for state, the green state map sounds like what you're talking about.
Let me just talk house seats. First of all, for your example. If I take house seats and I take Grand and San Juan, I've got about 25,000 people. So I've got to pick up 18,000 someplace else. Kane County, as I recall, is about 12,000. Am I wrong? I'm just guessing about what it is.
I'll tell you momentarily.
So you start going up these counties,
It's only
there's not a lot of
7,500.
people, what?
It's only 7,500.
7,500 up to 7,500. If you move into Washington County, you got St. George, it's 180,000. You got Cedar City, this county, and I think it's about 37,000. But these counties have very few people in it down below here. So you really end up, if you go west, where you really get the area, I guess you pick up Green River here, and if you go up to Price, you have more people than you can really put in. Senate district is different because you go 120, but this is only what 25,000. So you've got to add 80,000 people to the district to make it. So that way, you know. And the question really is when you put this together, you have really three bases, not really quite the same size. Where does the representative elected from? It has been Mike Noel. Now it's from Landing. I don't know. I remember legislators from Moab. Wasn't was a judge.
Wait, are you talking Senate or House?
House.
So House is Lyman and Walker. Or Watkins.
So the question really is, one way you can go is north into Vernal or in Uinta County. You can continue to go west in this area, and you won't really get enough people, I don't think, in this area or that to really make up a district. Then you got the question of compactness. Really,
Well, I mean, I don't know, it's like
We're going crazy with it, so you tell us.
the eastern side of the state is fairly compact, and Vernal is a community that's like a gateway and like a potentially birthing recreation community like we are.
But the population is too big. You can't combine all those two counties.
Joey, can you pull up whether it's the green house map or the purple house map? Just one of those.
And again, we're just putting this together, knowing full well we're gonna have input on.
I mean, I'm not gonna hold you to anything that sounds like legislature will either.
The green and the purple will identify what you're talking about, or the house.
I guess, I mean, the thing that grinds my gears is, and maybe this is just in John Burns' district, but I feel like Moab has no business being the same district as Provo, like.
Well, I guess some, as we're putting all different maps and looking at it, I've really argued you ought to take northern Utah, that has Utah State in it, because this ties to Moab and to Vernal and to Duchesne, the Roosevelt and Price and Blanding with the auxiliary schools they have here. So that you have a way of coming here to Moab, you're building a new building. I know Utah State is down here. You'd have a building that people in Moab could go to and be part of a conference with that legislator from all those areas without the traveling involved because of the tie Utah State has in this area. And I know Utah State has done a lot in the area of natural resources, of protecting the environment, of recreation, and those things. And so, but again, it's such a distance to go from Grass Creek on the very west of Box Elder County, all the way to Manila, all the way down to Mexican water.
I mean, is it too few people or too many people to have Grand, San Juan, Kane, Garfield, and Wayne?
So
It would probably be just short.
So this map right here, it's the one that our green team drew. It has Wayne, Kane, and Garfield together with San Juan, and it has to come up and pick up some additional population up here. Doesn't quite go all the way to Price, but you can see how big it is.
That looks great,
And that's part of what we need is that kind of feedback,
Yeah.
both verbally as well as if you want to write it on one of the comments that you go, gosh, we like this map, it makes sense to us. Or
Which, is this for?
this is a house. This is a house map. Yeah.
Proposed state house map.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would much better serve, in Moab, in addition to like the communities along like Rockwell, who, are, I think those districts are like going like way out of the West Desert or something.
Sure.
I don't know what she.
It's fun to hear this and have somebody else stand up and say that's all wrong. Our community of interest is something totally different. So it's
I
struggle,
understand,
yeah. But we appreciate your input.
Yeah.
Okay.
But thank you very much. Invite other comments, please.
Okay. That was a great segue. I'm gonna say that's not wrong, but my name is Kevin Walker. I'm on the Grand County Commission, and the first part of my remarks, I'm speaking for the commission, which passed the resolution by the commission. So the main thing we have, and I think for your committee, should be an easy ask. It'd be hard for the state legislative redistricting committee, but we would prefer that Grand County not be split as it was last time in the state house district. That really makes no sense at all. It's kind of an interesting fact, which maybe you're aware of. This community we're in right now, where everybody goes to the same high school and shops at the same grocery store, and same elementary school, even same aquifer, is split into 3 different state house districts. Districts 69, 70, and 73. One of those splits is along the county line, but just split that line makes no sense, but I think I appreciate the requirement here. I don't think any of your proposed maps do anything like that. The other thing that the commission would, and this is what I think I disagree with, is that the communities we think it makes most sense for us to be grouped with are San Juan County to the south, and then Emory and Carbon counties to the north. I think that's based largely on that's kind of 191 corridor. I think in the past, that has been a state house district, more or less like that. There's a BLM district historically, it's most of those 4 counties. Grand, Emory, and Cardigan counties are in the same health department district. And past San Juan is part of that too. If you look at, people in Moab who grew up somewhere else in Utah, the most popular answer would be Monticello or somewhere in San Juan County. People from Grand County drive through Price all the time, always. So like, I know a bit about Cardigan and Emory counties. I know the Severe County, places like that. So I think even though there might be some, similarity in geography or demographics, I think politically those places are very far away. So specifically on the, I think you had 5 state house district maps on your website. One is called Orange Number 1. That does contain kind of a weird split of Grand County, and the part of Grand County that carves out has almost no population. So I think you could just add Western Grand County to the District 66 of this Orange Number 1 map. I'm doing it in the order that you're on the webpage.
Yeah, this is my orange house map.
Okay, great, yeah. Yeah, so I think you can see that it comes up, and it actually, the boundary comes very close to Moab. And the point I'm making is you could make it follow the county line, and that would not affect population balance. So it's just, I think.
You have 3 hermits for the.
If the only exception I can think of that is it's a little bit of Grand County close to Green River, which is really as a community, and if that were carved out and made part of whatever, that seems justifiable.
We moved the river back east, and I'll take care of it.
So for most of the other maps are not too bad. For Orange Number 3 map, I don't think there's any obvious weirdness, but again, I think more sensitive group is with price rather than some of these largest places. Again, because of just transportation corridors and other intergovernmental associations that we're part of. So know that the county commissioners are in price. Other 3 maps seem largely reasonable for Grand County. So congratulations on that. For the state senate maps, state senate districts are larger, so obviously we're going to have some far distant places that we're part of. But I do think the green senate map, the first one we list, that I think is quite bad from Grand County's point of view, because we are grouped with people in the northern part of the state. We're basically excluded from all the counties I mentioned. Thrown in with places that are very far distant from us. So it's something that seems to make sense if you look at it on a map, but these corridors that are connecting us to the rest of that district are largely unpopulated. There aren't roads that go through there. So here, Carbon, Emory, and San Juan counties are all in different states and districts. Doesn't make quite as much sense. So maybe it's, I can't tell. Maybe it goes all the way up there to Park City, in which case. So yeah, those are my individual comments on the map. The last comment I want to make, I'm going to take off my county commissioner hat and put on my map petition hat, which is what my day job is. As you guys probably know, a lot of progress has been made over the past few years in sort of mathematically assessing district maps in terms of partisan bias, trying to do more gerrymandering. And I think there actually is a very good test now called the outlier test. That's called. So I just want to urge you for each of the state house maps to consider. Well, I think the standard thing to do is you would just use a computer to generate a bunch of state house maps, and then you would plot the partisan mean of those, how many state house seats are Democrats, and here's this map, this map, this map. And you'll see it's probably some kind of bell curve. And what we want to do is we want to get in the middle of the bell curve, not far out on trends. And when people do a deliberate partisan gerrymander, they're trying to get out on far one side. But that can also happen accidentally. So even someone who isn't trying, maybe just through bad luck, they can be out there. So I just want to urge you all to do that kind of test. I think there's lots of consultants in GGG, Tufts University as well, who pretty quickly. So I think that would give the public confidence that this is fair now. And I think also carry what, you know, it would give your maps more weight when you present them to the state legislature and put the pressure on the state legislature to not select that, you know, to use the same kind of standards that.
No, thank you very much. And our maps will be graded. We'll be doing some of it in-house, but they'll also be graded by the Princeton gerrymandering project. And so there will be a variety of tests that our maps will be exposed to. And so,
Okay.
and I think Better Boundaries is also going to be evaluating our maps as well.
Okay.
But I'm concerned how much the gerrymandering issue goes on political bias. And we don't know that.
Yeah.
So when we start drawing a map, I mean, I guess I can figure out that Park City's probably Democratic. I can probably figure out that Uinta Basin is Republican, but I have no idea where the lines are in the cities. And so as we do that, I know Commissioner Durham was really concerned because one of the maps they put together for Congress, somebody looked at it with political figures and said, oh, clearly they're biased for one political party. We don't know. I mean, and so I think one thing that we have to be very careful of is we don't start getting political data into things so that now we get tainted like that. So I think.
Well, I think you can have it both ways because it is.
We can't. Our law says we can't.
Well,
Okay.
in the following sense, I mean, I'm not urging you to believe things, but, you know, take partisan things into account when you're drawing maps, but it is certainly possible by accident, not intending to draw a biased map. Those kinds of things can happen. And I think if you can just get some consultants and say, okay, you know, we created 5,000 different state house maps, and on average, the state house, Republican share was this. And if you're proposing a map which is very different from that average 5,000 manually selected maps, it means you accidentally got a biased map.
But again, my concern would be the minute that's set, then we say, okay, now we got to correct this to make sure it's. Then we get involved in the politics of it. And I think the statute's pretty clear that people passed on Better Boundaries was they did not want us to get involved in partisan politics type of things. That's one of the difficulties of what you ask is what law the people pass says, don't do that.
Okay, well, I hope you can figure out that.
Thank you. Mayor.
Would it be okay if I sat here?
You
so
may,
I could
you
put
may.
My computer, I can just,
It's your house. You can sit
wiggle
wherever you want.
around. It's all of our home. Well, I guess the residents of Moab City, welcome to our home. But I am Emily Niehaus. I'm the mayor of the city of Moab, but I'm not speaking on behalf of the city council. I'm just speaking of it as a citizen. And I just want to make a few general comments and then go through the draft maps of the House, the Senate, and the congressional very briefly, just to give some comments for a few of them, if that's okay. So in general, what I have found over the past 4 years is that we really, when people talk about Southern Utah, they're talking about Southwestern Utah. They're not talking about Southeastern Utah. And so Southern Utah is described as St. George, Cedar City, and Zion National Park, and that clustered area. And then people say, oh, where are you from, Moab? Oh, that's Southeastern Utah. That's not Southern Utah. And so when people talk about Southeastern Utah, they're talking about everything from San Juan County to Graham County to even Carbon and Emory. And there could not be 4 more different counties than Carbon, Grand, San Juan, and Emory. However, we are united in the fact that we are thought of as southeastern Utah. And the reason why people put us together in a category is because of our relativity, to the Wasatch Front. Of course, Price is much closer, but still, we're kind of our own region. And I've found, sitting as a member of the Association of Governments, the Southeastern Utah Association of Local Governments, that there is quite a lot of similarity between us in these 4 counties, more than you think. Extractive, tourism, remote, rural, we all share, all 4 of our counties share those qualities. And so I just wanted to share that because while it may feel like Kanab could be a similar, they're not at all, because they're southern Utah and we're southeastern Utah. And so with that, and I've struggled with the whole being connected to Provo because we're so very different from Provo, but because Provo is not rural, nor is Provo remote. So when I think of similarities to Moab, I think of rural and remote, and east, southeast. Okay, so in going to the house maps, I just wanted to reflect. So the orange is no good. The draft one that takes us all the way up. It's just, again, I like the cluster of southeastern.
You're talking about the congressional Senate House.
I'm talking about the Utah house map, sorry. And then the second Utah is no good, I think, because it includes Moab, pretty sure. I'm just looking through. Yeah, so, well, it's kind of funny. It's like right on the other side of Kanab, so a little complicated there. So maybe not as bad as actually I would think. But again, I look for whether or not it include Orangeville. So actually the orange Utah House 3 draft 1 is pretty good as long as it doesn't include Kanab, which is kind of hard to see on this map. It doesn't look like it does. So then there's the other one I was going to say. The absolute worst is the purple Utah House 1 draft 1, because that really does split Moab. It splits our valley. So that's using the county line, and any map that uses the county line as a split is no friend of mine. Okay, so those are my.
What do you mean? Is that the map? How's this?
Let's pull it up so it's super specific. If you
Right,
can zoom
Moab
in
continues,
to where
the
this
community of
goes.
Moab continues down across the town.
Okay.
So see how it says Spanish Valley and 191? That basically is splitting our community into like north, the north and then the southern end.
Does Moab City go from Grand County into San Juan County?
I'm so glad that you asked. So if I say this is the valley,
Yeah.
the Moab Valley is, kind of what we call it. Moab City is like this. The Grand San Juan County line is here. So in our valley, we have Moab City, and then we have unincorporated Grant County and unincorporated San Juan County. And all of us are residents that send our children to the same school district.
How many people live in the San Juan portion of it?
The San Juan portion of our valley, the number of residents,
330 registered voters, as I understand.
330 registered voters.
We can't talk about
However, we're looking at growth in that region as well. And I know numbers today. But that's why maps that use the Grand San Juan County line are particularly problematic. If we go ahead and move that line down and make sure that we include the southern portion of our valley, that just sets us up for better success. And if it's only a difference of 300, that seems like a reasonable.
Well, I can tell you that the purple team does not like this map.
He's
Great.
a worker.
Well then, great.
But let me just share the problem. The county clerk in San Juan County has to count those people and get the ballots because they live in San Juan County. We
Yeah.
need to move to county line. I mean, that's, if that's what you're doing, because those people live in San Juan County, their elections, their voting thing is all handled by their county clerk. So you got a city that's split. And I know Roosevelt, I didn't realize that this Ballard is a city east of Roosevelt, just over the boundary. So Ballard's in Utah, in Uinta County. Roosevelt is in Duchesne County, and but they're in different counties. So it's really hard for us to draw a map like you're talking about when there's going to be a county clerk in San Juan County say, wait a minute. You know, how come I have to handle different votes for that 300 people? And they can do it. I mean, I say they can't, but that's kind of feedback we get back from county clerks is don't create a district out here with 10 people in it.
Yeah, but I want to set boundaries for the, that represent a community as opposed to make it easier for a clerk.
Well,
I appreciate
understand what you're
their
saying.
job.
I'm just
I'm
not
just gonna
saying.
ask them to do a little more work so that we're represented as a whole community.
But if we had it all in one district, it wouldn't matter.
Yeah,
I was just saying that the Grand Canyon Clerk has been doing that same kind of work for the past few years.
Yeah.
No, because of the splits already, sure.
So we know it's.
we uniquely understand how complicated it is in Grand County. Thanks, Kevin, for that comment. Okay, so, Utah Senate maps, Utah Senate maps. I don't particularly like any of them, but I'm just gonna say why, so that maybe that's more helpful. So the, purple one, gives me heartburn because of, let's see,
Goes up into Utah County.
it goes up into Utah County, is right. I think I was thinking this one might be the least bad, but I would love for it to, instead of going up so far, better would be to go, gosh, I don't know, it's complicated, over. So, like what Sam was saying earlier, yes, the Colorado River is a natural boundary, but perhaps instead of going north so far, perhaps we could go east, Torrey, oh gosh, they're, the Capitol Reef region is actually quite similar. You know, they're kind of middle. They're not really associated with southern Utah or southeastern Utah, but I would say that they would find themselves seated nicely with us. In fact, the Capitol Reef area, the Boulder, Utah, and then, you know, as you're getting into Escalante and on your way to Bryce is similar to us, but again, not Canal.
Do you know how many people are in Utah County in this map? Because that would tell us, we could take 5 counties, and if they only have 2,000 each, we're not anywhere near the counts we need to have.
Well, it looks like it includes Payson, but it doesn't quite go all the way into Spanish Fork. So honestly, I think you could pick up, so the purple Utah Senate 2 draft 1 could pick up on the other side of the Colorado River, that region, that Capitol Reef region, instead of the just south of Spanish Fork region. It includes Price, and again, I do think that there's a place for Price, but also Orangeville, Castleville, as we see the development of the swell. Those are really emerging as similar communities to Moab. And as we're seeing them transition from economies of yesterday to economies of tomorrow. But then let's see, the orange, again, Wasatch Front. And then the green Utah Senate one, draft one map, is interesting too, but I talk about Utah, and I use the metaphor, if Salt Lake City's the heart, the head of the state, what's the heart? And I feel like Price and Richfield are the left and right chambers of Utah's heart. They work well together, but Price is very different from Richfield, and Richfield is very different from Price. Different economies, different everything, and kind of different, leading to different areas of the rest of the state. So I think that's why the green is my least favorite, just because it's kind of, I don't know, including us with Richfield just doesn't really make sense at all in that respect. And I would feel sorry for whoever is representing that district for how much they have to drive. And then finally, the congressional map. I think my preferred would be the purple draft one. I mean, it just is all the southern, but it includes Provo. And I just wonder, is there any way to get around that?
We could move to Idaho.
Yeah, but it does feel like, at least with the purple, it captures southern. And it kind of keeps Salt Lake City together, Utah County together, and then northern. I don't know that, I would probably, wiggle lines here and there. But I would say that would be my preference. I know that right now, the way that we're currently districted, each district has a little piece of the urban pie and a little piece of the rural pie. And I get that, but at the same time, it really does put a lot of unlike together. So I think my preference would be that purple congressional 4 draft one. And I guess that's it for me. I really didn't intend to comment on the state school board other than to just say, again, if Moab Valley is an area that this upper portion is like Moab City, and then down here there's a line. This is Bryan County and this is San Juan County. So this whole area is really our school district.
So the kids in the northern part of San Juan County are coming up to Moab to school.
That's right, and that's through agreement between our two school districts.
Okay.
Yep.
That's helpful to know, because we just see school district boundaries. We don't know of any of those kinds of agreements, for example.
Yeah.
Let me, again, I want to make sure we haven't made our mind. We're just trying to get information to do this. One of the concerns I have is when population from Ogden to Provo is probably 75–80% of the state. It's almost impossible to put a district together unless you do one in the Ogden-Davis area and part of Salt Lake, one in Salt Lake, and one in Salt Lake and Utah County. And that would leave all the whole state for rural, which would be, I think, an unbelievable burden on anyone who had to represent that area. So there's going to have to be some of the population that Wasatch Front in every one of the congressional districts, just to give them the numbers. My concern, and again,
Are we talking the Senate?
no, I'm talking to Congress.
Oh, Congress, thank you. Okay.
And in Congress, you don't have to live in your district. You can run for any district you want. Jason Chaffetz didn't live in his district. Ben McAdams did not live in his district. Blake Moore does not live in his district. They all live outside their district when they run. I was really concerned that we don't do it in such a way that all 4 of the representatives come out of Salt Lake County.
Yeah.
Because that's where the money is, that's where the population, that's where the publicity is. You know people in Salt Lake County. I don't think there's very many people in Salt Lake County can even tell you who people are in Moab. You know, you don't have a person in Moab as prominent as say Scott Anderson, Zions Bank, or Spence Eccles, and these kind of, the Huntsmans, the people that people know across the whole state. And that's one of the problems when you get these races, is that people can look at that and not live in the district and still run, or even if, so if you end up with so much your district for that, for example, and that's what we may do, is my concern always is Utah County may control who that legislator is. And you got John Curtis there now. I assume he lives in Utah County. And so I'm not sure where.
Let me just reflect on the attention that John Curtis has given us. John Curtis has been so dynamite. We've had so many town halls, I'm not sure I can count. The representation that he has provided us, even if there's not political alignment, there is presence, and that really matters to me. No, I don't know, maybe I'll just start gushing over him because he's got his conservative climate caucus that he's working really hard at for, pushing forward, and I really respect that. Jason Chagas, when he was our rep, was never here, never came. So it's our responsibility to engage with our congressman for sure. I guess if they're gonna live anywhere, I mean, I guess we need to be doing a better job of making someone popular from Moab to run, or from our.
Well, in the olden days, when you had one for each senator, you probably had one of the most powerful senators in the state here from Grand County, because he could be real, or he or she could be elected every year. I know one of the most powerful ones was the Hopkins from Rich County. He was elected every year, and he had the same power as the senator from Salt Lake County. So I think that's the thing of the past.
Those are bygone days.
Bygone days.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you so much for coming to Moab. It really means a lot to me that you came to Moab physically.
Our pleasure.
I too just sit here. Hello, my name is Britton Ballard. I am a Moab City Planning Commissioner. I'm also a student at Utah State University in the nursing program. I would not say that I know very much about, what is going on, but I would say that I do, and also I do want to say that I don't speak for the planning commission. I'm speaking as a citizen. One thing that I do want to go on the record is that I don't think that how we do this is logical. The way in which we are dividing districts, if districts are determined by population, that means that we're going to get a set number of congressmen either way, depending on what the districts are going to look like. So I feel like it would make more sense if districts were divided upon area, rather than spending so much of our time drawing these lines to make populations that just doesn't make sense. We have nothing in common with Provo. And yeah, we might have some in common with Logan, as we are Utah State University. That doesn't really mean much, as the sense that Utah State University, if you can come here, you can go anywhere. I would say that we have way more in common with Escalante, we have way more in common with Zion and Capitol Week and all those places. So with the logic that we are going to be splitting based on population, we will always have to be splitting cities, no matter what, because most of our population in this state is in Salt Lake City. So whether or not we like it, we're going to have to split in random crazy boundaries here, because there's so little people in Southern Utah and so many in North Utah. However, everyone in Salt Lake Valley has way more in common and way more interest in common than they would ever have with someone like me in Moab. So I know this is not going to change today, and yeah, we are, super loving numbers, but if I had the choice, and we were going to be logical, I think that it would just be more logical to split based on boundaries that actually make sense about what that area has interest in.
such as Southern Utah and all like the national parks, that we need representation based on our interests as a tourist destination area. Okay, let's see. Yeah, and also a person of representation should represent a common interest, and the voice of that person should be for that area. So, yeah, so you're saying that we don't, so a person from Salt Lake City can represent our district. Wouldn't it make more sense that a person who represents that district should be from that district? So we have these one rules that are like, okay, we have to have these numbers, these very specific numbers. But yet we're like, but anyone can represent that district. You know? And so, and also, because we have this hard rule of numbers, we have given so much power to people in the sense of we allow gerrymandering to occur because of this. If we split the states based on geographical and like actually common sense, gerrymandering could not exist. Like, we wouldn't have to spend all this time. You guys are spending so much of your time hell bent and doing mental gymnastics to draw these lines when it just, yeah, I know, okay. I should get off my soapbox somewhere. I guess you did correct what I was trying to say. Something I do want to add for this is that I think on your website, you should include a old map, the current map, what is, and more information just as to why that map doesn't work, so that people have an idea and a reference. Because yeah, these maps are all like great and everything, but there's not much of a reference point for people to be like, oh, like this worked before and this did not. So, yeah, that's it. If you want, I would love information. I'd love to be schooled. If you have like any reason as to why.
Well, first of all, thank you for your comments. And the issue with the geography is Commissioner Hilliard pointed out, back in the 1960s, the Supreme Court ruled that it was one person, one vote. And so every person has to have equal representation across the state. And that's why we have to have this push towards the numbers. And you're right, at times it creates very illogical lines. And one of the things that we're trying to do is to make a little sense to those lines, where we can. And we hope that we're trying to do that. But also thank you for the comment on the existing maps and making sure that they're accessible. Then we'll work on that.
I follow that too. Only Congress, they do not have to live in their district. For state senate, state house, and school board, they have to live in their district. And if they leave the district during the term of office, they leave their office. So where you live is very important for senate, house, and school board. It's only the Congress, and we have no power over that. Congress sets those rules, we don't.
All right, thank you very much.
My name is Allison Mathis, and I am just myself on this president here in Moab. I've been here about 8 years this time around.
Talk into the microphone, would you please? I'm having a little hard time hearing.
Can you hear me better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. My name is Allison Mathis. I've lived in Moab for about 8 years. I'm just a citizen, and I've lived in Utah in the past in the 90s and then was elsewhere in the Southwest. My main reason for coming today was to express that unlike the current situation, and you guys have kind of indicated that Grand County is no longer going to be split up, but definitely Moab and Spanish Valley, we're one community. As people have said, we go, our kids go to the same schools, we shop at the same grocery store, we do the same things as a community, and to have us represented in more than one district in the state house totally doesn't make any sense. My neighbors like a mile away are in a different district. It makes no sense. So that's kind of my most, my biggest priority. I mean, Moab is diverse, and that's actually one of the really the things that I really like about it. But we are one community, because we share so much. And it's a Moab, Spanish Valley, and also Castle Valley, which I haven't really heard people talk about. We're all, same schools, same grocery store, same restaurant, we're all kind of one.
Where's Castle Valley?
It's up the river road, it's about, what, 30 miles?
Is it
from
Grant
Moab?
County?
It is Grand County, yes.
Okay.
So, they come in town to shop and do everything else. It's a little small community, which no one has mentioned. And I,
Once you get 30,000 people to move there, and then we'd have a big enough.
well, it would
I'm
describe the
kidding.
oil character of Castle Valley, which I don't live there, but, it's just, it's part of the larger area. And just to throw out an idea, is you guys talked about this communities of interest. And you talked about how the Colorado River was a big barrier. And some people have mentioned that. I'm a geologist by training. And so if you go from one side of the river to the other, the rocks are the same. And so in some ways,
It's just getting there.
yeah, if you're driving, but if you're, so the landscape and the people who live in the landscape have more in common on the two sides of the Colorado River in this area than they do up in Salt Lake. It's a whole different physiographic province, and that's kind of a physiographic province is a section of the continent kind of described on kind of landscapes down here. It's red rocks, flat lanes, sedimentary rocks, and going way more detailed than but actually, if you look at a physiographic map of the Colorado Plateau, you can find one online, and it breaks it into subregions. And the subregion where we are here in southeastern Utah is called the Canyonlands subprovince, and it's San Juan County and Grand County basically. And then what's on the other side of the river, which is what Kane and Wayne County and all that. So just if you, I know rocks aren't people, but if you think about a community of interest, the physiographic province idea, because the landscape is the same in the Canyonlands section, whereas in the basin and range up in Salt Lake is different, and so people are living differently up there. So the landscape.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Good evening, it's Katie Wright, Executive Director of Better Boundaries. About that. I first want to thank you for all of your time and your great work on the Independent Commission and from all the good input from the people of Moab. I just want to go back to the earlier conversation referenced by the Grand County Commissioner and just clarify that from the time of the Proposition 4 that was passed by the voters in Utah through the compromise with our legislator, the intent around the criteria of undue favoring of a politician or party or partisan favoring stayed consistent. And like the commissioner and mathematician mentioned, the bell curve measurement that has gained a lot of momentum in math and mapping communities across the country is something that Better Boundaries also supports as a really effective way of ensuring that maps don't live as outliers, but live in a practical center area of the bell curve, reflecting, the electorate of the state. So I would say that, we have really supportive of the methodology of the commissioners in their map drawing. We're doing it with integrity across all the criteria, and a fantastic job. And as we move to, or you move to measurement, I think it's important to look at that criteria and that bell curve methodology.
Okay. I don't remember where I read it or heard it in this process, but the bell curve has some problems, some serious problems with it. And so I know based on whomever I've heard that from or seen, the somebody I respected, and so I really haven't given it much weight because, and I can't remember the details. I just remember somebody that I respected in the whole process that we've done here. indicated that has some real problems with it. It could create an anomaly that really doesn't work on paper, right? So I just.
Oh, go ahead, Kate.
Well, I would say in addition to not being an attorney, I'm not a mathematician. However, there are many groups from, higher education across the country who have looked at this and are really establishing this. I think that the challenge comes into what past data you use. And I know, for instance, that Princeton gerrymandering has been very thoughtful about the Utah data they're using, understanding some of the anomalies in our past elections. And I have had the opportunity to reference that with some Utah mathematicians who also, confirmed that they feel strongly that that is the right data set.
But do they use political voting? So when they do the balance, do they look Republican, Democrat votes, and is that all tied up? Because I don't think we can look at that. But go.
Well, I think what we can't do is we can't purposefully favor or disfavor. Now, the commission has taken the position that we don't want to look at that data as we're mapping. But as our maps are evaluated, I think that's likely one of the criteria that people are going to use to evaluate them. And if we see that when we get our maps back, if we see that we're lying on either on the far left or far right, we may say, oh, we didn't know we were doing that. Maybe we want to come back and regroup it and rethink it so that we don't end up favoring or disfavoring, even if it was unintentional.
My skepticism is I did have a mathematics degree, and I am a lawyer. And I know as a lawyer, it doesn't take me too much time. If I have enough money, I can find an expert to say almost anything you want to say. So I'll be glad to look at it. But I think, again, I need to go back in my notes, see if I remember what it was. But somebody that I really respected or read somewhere said that while this is talked about as a panacea of solving it, it creates a lot of problems as well. So
I think one of the things that we were told is that rather than using it to choose your map, using it to evaluate the maps is a better strategy. So, thank you, Kate. Right. Are there any other public comments? Seeing that we've pretty much run off everybody else. All right, we'll go ahead and close the public comment portion of our meeting. I don't have any other business on the agenda, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
move to adjourn.
All right, this meeting is hereby adjourned. Thank you very much.